Sunshine is a trailblazing psychic medium, soul healer, spiritual advisor, high priestess, Reiki Master, and recovering alcoholic. Known affectionately as the pink-haired sober witch, she is on a mission to help highly motivated witches in recovery rediscover their magic, align with their highest purpose, and live the abundant life promised in sobriety. Sunshine, you are very welcome.
Oh, I'm so delighted to be here, Sharon. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. So I know the first question that many people will ask is, what is a witch? Or how does one determine they are a witch?
Yeah, I think those are two different questions, and I'll answer the latter one first. How do you determine if you're a witch? I mean, you just get to decide, just like any other thing that you want to claim, right? Any other title, any other label that you want to claim, you get to decide whether or not you're a witch, right? Some people feel an innate calling. Some people realize that their practices and the things that they're doing are very witchy. And there are a lot of people that even have those practices that say, you know what, I'm not going to claim the title. And I'll just kind of look at them like, but you do know you're doing everything, right? Um, so, as far as my personal philosophy around what makes a witch, there are three pillars to me that make a witch. And the first one is the belief in the practice of the psychic arts, right? So we are engaging in our psychic gifts, we are leaning into our intuition. This could be using different forms of divination like tarot cards, pendulums, runes, tea leaf, palmistry. um, I even think astrology in its own, aspect has a lot of divinatory properties to it, right? So when we are believing in these things and practicing and using them in our life, right? There's your pillar one. The second one is the belief in the practice of magic, right? And magic is there's a really beautiful definition somewhere that I wish I could remember every time, but it's this um, ability to engage within the energies around us, within us, in order to bring about changes within our life in the world, right? And this can be as simple as a prayer, right? Anybody that sits down or is knelt in a pew and, prayed to even a Christian God is practicing an act of magic, right? You are setting this intention forward and asking for something, or, wishing for well wishes. So the belief in the practice of magic. And the third pillar, I believe, is that the belief in the practice that we are here to be of service to the world.
I love
And
that.
that service can be as simple as being a mother or a father that is here to raise a beautiful human to contribute to the world in their own way, or it could be as complex and as big as creating an entire movement around witches and recovery.
Mm.
Yeah.
Lovely. And again, if we look back through time and history, and we've obviously been fed the fairy tale stories of that witches are bad and that they were burnt in fires. And again, obviously now, I think with all the awareness we have in our own spiritual practice and awareness, and obviously through the internet and more reading and books and everything, we realize that many of the women that were burnt at the stake, for practicing witchcraft is because they were honing in on their own intuition, their own power within, and that they were able to come up with potions and lotions that would help the sick or help somebody with fertility
Yeah.
or help in many different aspects of their lives. But again, that was seen as outside of the realm of whatever people considered normal.
Well, if you go back and you start to look into history around the time of the witch trials, both within, Europe and even in the United States, there started to become this incredible growth around organized religions, Christianity, as well as modern medicine as we know it here today. Right. So how would these folks not see a threat to the woman or the man for that matter? Right? I mean, there were men that were practicers of this, right? That were engaging in the natural healing remedies, that were, being called to connect to the energetics that they were sensitive to bring about, shifts in healing. I mean, the witches in our past were the midwives, they were the healers, they were the folks that you would bring your sick child to when everything else that you possibly could try just didn't work,
Mm.
right? They were so ingrained and in tune with the way that the universe worked that they themselves could listen to spirit and find out how to help, how to heal, right? There's also all of these stories in history about how these great people in power, I forget which um, king it was, but it was the last king, I think, maybe, or maybe it was a queen, that literally had, I think it was, gosh, what is his name? I want to say John Edwards, and it's not John Edwards,
Yeah.
but um, uh, the really, really kind of famous came about the whole Enochian system. Uh, like kept this gentleman by his side. Like magicians and witches would be by the sides of these very powerful political individuals because of their divinatory powers, because of their magical powers, because they could heal the armies, the warriors, the family,
Mm.
right? So it wasn't until modern religion as we know it and modern medicine came about to challenge that we started to watch the horrors applied to these beautiful souls that were really just here to be of service to the world.
And again, I suppose, when we look at, you said it, modern religion and modern medicine, and it came along, and a lot of people were overtaken by the power and I suppose the fear of it as well. One of the things that really holds people in a group is fear. And that, I suppose, had tormented people's lives for many things. But I love what you said is that this is, I suppose, we're all spiritual beings. It's a spiritual practice that we all have within us that some choose and some don't choose. When did you find this was really strongest in your life?
Oh, really strongest. I mean, it's had undercurrents throughout my most of my life, but strongest, I stepped into recovery from alcoholism in October of 2019. And, a couple of months into my recovery, when I had to like pause, I had enough clarity to be able to pause and reflect. Because the reality is, like, I was a hot mess when I first stepped into it. When I had enough time behind me where I could pause and reflect, I started to look around and ask, how am I going to stay on this path?
Mm.
How am I going to continue to wake up every morning and choose to not drink, choose to not continue to abuse myself in the ways that I had for years? And being in this sober mind and this sober body at that point, spirit was a lot louder, right? And it came forward pretty clearly that it was time for me to embrace a spiritual practice that I tiptoed around, danced around, pulled out of my hat only when I desperately needed it,
Mm.
right? And to ingrain it in my every single day. And so it was around January of 2020 where I started to talk to spirit on a daily basis and ask for its guidance on how I incorporate this into my life so that I never fall back into the place of darkness that I once was.
Mm. How did that darkness, I always say, get from my own personal experience, I always say that I needed to be in the darkness to be able to see my own light, I suppose, my
Mm,
own essence. And that darkness, even though it sometimes is not a nice place to be because you meet yourself there, everything that you've done, all of your fears, all of your traumas, all everything. But until I walked through those tunnels of darkness and met myself at different stages of my life, there was no way I was going to fully come out as my authentic self. Did you feel like that, Sunshine?
I I would say, it's interesting you're asking this question and I'm getting this kind of picture in my head of like I was in the darkness the whole time, right? I mean, I was in active addiction the majority of my adult life. And even though I was deluded to think I was happy in some moments, that I knew what joy was, like looking back on the other side, I didn't. So the darkness had to take me to this place that I was no longer masked or deluded, that I wasn't in suffering all the time, right? Like we end up in this place, and our modern culture says, gives you a list of, here's all of the things that you should do in order to be a successful human being, right? And we just blindly accept it because once upon a time we're children, and that list is given to us, right? And here's what you got to do to be a successful child, and here's what you got to do to be a successful college student, here's what you have to do to be a successful, and you just start checking it off, right? And it's at some point in our lives, at some point, when you do not pause enough to just question, like, why am I, like, whose life am I leading and living if I'm just following a list somebody else made, right? So if we don't ever ask that at any point, you better darn well believe that spirit, the universe, God, the creator, the divine, is going to take you into the darkest corners so that you can see them. And yeah, I mean, the things that I did in my last 2 years of active addiction, of drinking, the amount of blackouts that I had, the amount of anger that came about, the amount of horrible things that I did to my partner at the time. I there's just I look back now and I'm like, who was this person? Who was she? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I hear you. But from that question, who was she? And now here you are sitting, obviously, and you're doing such amazing work and able to speak so openly about it. As you look back at that, you know, beautiful, really fearful person, because that's what you are living in, isn't it? In fear of yourself. And you look back at her and you think, what is it that she really and truly needed in her life?
Uh, she needed someone to stand up for her. She needed someone, I think about it sometimes, it's like that slap in the face. It's that, that shake of like, what are you really doing? Again, it's somebody to grab the list and crumble it up and throw it away and say, this is your life. This is your life to be living. How do you want to live it? How do you want to make a difference? How do you want to feel every morning when you wake up? Do you really want to wake up with a hangover every morning? Do you really want to wake up not knowing and understanding, what you did the night before? Do you want to wake up with regrets, resentment, right? Yeah, it was that's what I needed. And it's wild. And I say this is where the darkness kind of, we just we become these, like, I don't even know if it's robots. I mean, that was used to describe me quite a bit of time. And it's this human being, or I'll rephrase that. It's just this human doing. You're not even being at that point. You're taught from a young age just how to do things and what you
Mm,
need to do. Yeah. And so I needed someone to, like, slap me across the face, shake me, grab that piece of paper and say, this is not it.
mm. I suppose it for everybody really, and everyone that I work with, everybody just wants to be seen for who they are
Mhm.
and that person they are behind all of those masks. And they're living up to everyone else's expectations of who they should be. And they've done that, as you said, from childhood up to adolescence, up to adulthood. And they want to be approved of. So they do what other people say is good. It's great. You're doing great. As you said, you're successful now. But inside, you don't feel like it's your success. It's for somebody else. So there is that lost feeling of being detached or disconnected from your authentic self, your true self, your being. As you said, you're just doing in life. And I always think about us as children that we don't know any different, do we, Sunshine? We don't know any
Mhm.
different only for the people that are around us. But I remember as a child thinking, I don't know if I believe all of this. I don't know if I believe everything everyone's saying. There was always that something inside of me. And I'm not sure about you, and I know many people have said it to me. They felt like they were standing back and witnessing life that other people were telling them to live, but that it didn't ring true for them. But they didn't have the courage, or they didn't have, as you said, someone to stand up for them or someone to show them another direction. So they followed that path until that path no longer could lead them anywhere good, only into the darkness, where in that darkness they had to sit with it and they had to find the light within themselves so they could guide themselves out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very true statement. I think back, when I was a child, I was I mean, I've been told by many of my family members I was incredibly inquisitive. I always ask the question of why, right? And I've had a little bit of a rebellious streak in me most of my life, but there's some point, and I'm sure there's like some psychological, studies, and I don't know if it's Freud or whatever, that would talk about the stages. And there's some point in our childhood where the curiosity just lifts, it just disappears, right? And I don't know if it's the first standardized test that we have to take, or the first time that we get a bad grade and we now feel that shame, right? Or we get yelled at or scolded in front of our peers. I don't know when it is, but there becomes this point where we just learn how to stop questioning
Mm,
and being curious and start conforming,
mm.
right? And this to me is the most. There's like, I have this really lovely friend who's got a young boy that goes to the Waldorf schools. I don't know if you're familiar with Rudolf Steiner.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah.
Well, he's created an entire school, and these are, I mean, I've looked into and I've read, and I get to watch this little guy. I've known him since he was like 9 months old, and he'll be 5 this coming spring, and I get to watch how he is so different than any other child than I've ever known, because of how they incorporate this freedom and independence, and they build off of this curiosity, right? And I'm just, if only as adults we were given the opportunity to be more curious, right? We were given the opportunity and taught, right, how to be curious and to start to question. I don't think many of us would need to go into such a dark place to find that light, right?
Do you think it's part of our experience of being on this earth, to not just witness, but I suppose to experience some of that darkness so that we can find the joy, the light, the love, the truth, the authenticity, the curiosity? Because I often say in the simple things, we don't know true sadness unless we have felt immense joy or immense happiness, and when we've loved somebody, all of our lives, and then that person passes from this world, that deep loss, that deep grief, it's because we've loved so hard. So for me, it's kind of like, if we don't experience certain things, and I'm not saying everyone has to, but I think if you are, and I really feel deeply on this. I suppose I talk from my own personal point, and just even seeing your story and your journey, Sunshine, is that sometimes from those darkest places, we come out and we want to serve others, we want to help others. But in doing so, we're relearning everything we were ever taught. And we're actually learning more about ourselves and discovering more about the possibilities within us, and that there are no limits.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting because there's some like thoughts that are coming through when you're talking and kind of asking about this. And I do think there is purpose and there is reason as to why we go through this. But I think much of this has been cascaded throughout the generation, throughout the lifetimes
Mm,
behind us, right? If there was not so much war, if there wasn't so much hatred, if there wasn't so much, I sometimes hesitate, but the easiest word to use, evil,
mm,
that was present and oppressing so many of us, right? I don't know that we would have the necessity to be into such darkness.
mm,
I would think that the pain or the suffering would come from things like losing a loved one,
mm,
from natural, like the natural order of the world, not through, watching your child be gunned down on the streets,
mm,
or watching your partner head to war and their life being taken from them, or to see your entire family or community wiped out because of war, right?
mm,
I think that if we were in a world where some of these very, very intensely polarizing forms of oppression, negativity, hatred, and harm didn't exist, I don't think that we would go into such dark depths,
mm.
right? I don't think the need would be there. But as long as that's the world that we continue to live in, then when we are born into each of these lifetimes, yes, there are times that we're going to have to go through some of the darkest in order to be able to recognize the blessings that come when we're in joy filled, wonder filled, and
Mm.
awe filled moments. But I would give, I would absolutely, if we could live in a world where that polarization did not exist, I think we would still be able to feel joy and happiness and love and that wonderment and awe that's so beautiful to feel. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be so fleeting.
Yeah. And then when we think about looking back through the generations, as you said, and looking back through history, what has humanity truly learned through all of those horrors? And I know for every generation we have, we'll say 75% of the population of the world trying to change things. And then you have a certain percentage that don't allow things to change or continue the horrors, continue the greed and the wars and everything else. That some people get tired. They get tired of having to change things. But is that not also an experience of being in service to others, and that just when your life is going good, that you still can't wish or create a ripple effect from, the place of healing or awareness that you have now in your life?
Yeah, I think that is very common that people, yes, they do get tired of it, but I would beg to say that if you are truly tired, then what you're focused on changing probably is not what you are supposed to be focused on changing, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. I have a dear friend, the same one that the mother of the child that I was mentioning, and she owns a restaurant in Chicago. And she is so passionate about her community and the causes within her community, so much so that she says she only owns this restaurant so that she can give and do work in the community. It's a beautiful mission. And she will get very upright about certain things that are going on, like some of this force that's going into these cities right now in the
Mm,
United States, where we've got some of the military stepping in and trying to deport folks. And she'll get very passionate about those. And we've had conversations where she's like, well, don't you care? And I was like, I care, but that's not my mission,
mm,
right? My mission is to help these individuals that are suffering from addiction, right? That are in pain and suffering because of the things that have happened in their past life, right? That they are willing to step out of and let go of. My mission is to help witches in recovery. I am very clear about that. And the moment I start venturing outside and thinking I'm going to somehow influence change in an area that is not my mission, yes, I will become tired. Yes, I will become
mm,
overwhelmed. I may even succumb to depression. So I have to be very clear around what my purpose and my mission in life is and focus there, because the moment we step outside of that, yes, it is very easy to want to raise a white flag and give up.
mm. That makes sense because, again, so many people are they have so many labels, they have so many hats on, and there's so many things they want to do, and they want to change the world. And again, I'd say one person can make a difference. But if you are that thinking you're that one person, you're taking an awful lot on your own shoulders. So I always say you have to start with looking after yourself and being kind to yourself and strengthening yourself, disciplining yourself. And then whatever you have learned from all of your life experience and learnings, you share that with that community, whatever that community, whether it be online, your friends, your family, whatever. And through that, I think there's a ripple effect because I think we have
Yes.
to start within ourselves. And for what you said is that's my mission. I think many people are unclear about what their mission or their
Yeah.
purpose is in life. And we have to bring that purpose back to ourselves. Again, it's what feels right. And because you're so passionate about this, and because this has kind of been the foundation of your sobriety, and then bring that again from the lived experience, being able to bring that to the people that need it the most is where you are going to do your greatest work.
Absolutely, 100% on that. And I sit in circle with these individuals and have for the last year. And I've said many times to them, I feel very grateful and blessed that they've welcomed me onto their journeys, but this is my journey too, right? This is
Mm,
what I'm doing, showing up for them and sharing. This is like helping me, it's healing me, right?
mm,
And I never could have done it if I didn't focus internally first, right? My first two, three, four, I didn't start this work until my fifth year in recovery,
mm,
right? I didn't start going out and help until I had gone through some real dark stuff still. Like when we step in, when we step into this big transformation in our life, like we walk into the dark or walk into the light from the first time to the dark,
mm,
that does not mean that the shadow is not still clung to your back.
mm,
That does not mean that there aren't big things that you. I had a repressed memory come up just 2 years ago of childhood sexual abuse.
mm,
I'd never remembered this before, right? And these are the dark things that continue to kind of I'll be propel me forward in my healing journey.
mm,
2 years ago, that memory came up, and I'm just now even able to share about it because I had to do so much work to process, to understand, to look at it, right? So we have to be willing. And when people don't know and understand their mission and what they're supposed to be contributing to this world, it's usually because they have not spent enough time looking within. They have not embraced the card of the hermit and said, what is this light that is inside of me that I need to be focused on?
mm,
And I do think sometimes, Sharon, that people will think that the mission is like what I'm describing, big, right? Big and gigantic. And you cannot deny the fact that there are some individuals whose mission is to raise healed children,
mm,
right? To heal all of the stuff that they've been witness to throughout their lifetimes so that they can bring a beautiful child up in this world.
mm,
To there are some people whose mission is only to help their parents, in their later years heal. Like your mission does not have to be necessarily world changing. Sometimes it can be generational changing,
mm.
right?
Yeah. I love that, as you said, just, with the hermit card, what is that light inside of me? And I think there is an avoidance for a lot of people to go inwards and,
Mm.
as I said again, go through those beautiful. I always say the universe lives within me, and I could spend the whole day, sunshine, traveling within my mind and my heart and going into all the places that need to be looked at today, that it's a journey in itself. And that is what helped me heal many years ago. And like you, it's my I suppose, motivation now in helping others as well that, no one is truly lost. There's a belief that they're lost because they're not the same as everybody else or how they were supposed to turn out because somebody told them that maybe they're just rediscovering who they actually wanted to become, but were never allowed to be that true self. And that is sometimes a scary journey for people.
Yeah, I think back to that first year in recovery, and there were three major things that I had to face, right? And it goes back. I did this huge study in the chakras, and so this is really, our root, our sacral, and our solar plexus chakra right there, like this work. You have to be willing to face the things that you're fearful of, right? And sometimes this is saying no. People are afraid to say no to other people, right? They're afraid to say, no, I don't like that. No, I don't want to do that. No, that doesn't interest me. No, I don't have time, right? They're afraid to just say the word no, period, and not have to even explain like themselves afterwards, right? So I had to face all of that first, be willing to face the fear and continue to face them. Like I have, at this point in my recovery, I have come to realize that when I start to feel the response of fear, it's usually my indication to move into it, to
Mm,
do whatever it is that's coming up that's creating this anxiety within me, right? Because that anxiety is associated to change. And historically speaking, I learned that change is scary,
mm,
right? So I transmuted that fear into excitement
mm,
and started to look at change as excitement. Be
mm.
curious what's on the other side of this, like a child.
Yeah.
What'll happen? Like you ever seen a child like climb a tree? And an adult, we're like, oh my God, they're gonna fall. And they're just like, they just scale that tree like no fear, right? Right. Or they have the fear, but they're so excited about what they
Mm,
might see from the top of that tree, what they might be able to look at, right? So transmuting that fear was a really huge, and I still they don't it doesn't pop up as much nowadays, but when it does, that is spirit saying to me there is an opportunity on the other side of this, and boy
mm.
golly, you should run into it, chase after it, go for it, right? And then the other two things were shame and guilt,
Mm,
right? Because when we start saying no, when we start going after what we desire, what's right for us, what's aligned with who we are and our own authentic self, we start to break apart the attachments and the codependencies around the people, with the people around us. And so that shame and that guilt starts to flare itself up, right? Oh, you shouldn't be doing this. That's a big shame. Anytime we say the word should, there's shame involved in there, right? There's shame in some aspects. So, yeah, I started to face those things, and that fear and that scariness around having to feel shame and feel guilt and know that they were only temporary emotions
mm,
that I could transmute in their own way into love for myself. So that shame and guilt transmuted into love for myself, because every single time that I stepped into something that was meant for me and more aligned for me, and I could transmute that, that meant that there was more, that heart chakra became healed.
mm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Because again, all emotions are just energy in motion. Nothing ever stays with us. And people say, I want to be happy. And I'm saying, what does happy look like and feel like in your body? We
Mhm.
can't be any emotion all of the time. We can have underlying sadness and underlying fear and underlying shame and underlying guilt based, and we could base our choices and decisions on that, and not process stuff that is held maybe in cellular memory, all of that stuff. But every other emotion, even shame and guilt, unless we hold tight to them, they all just want to flow. That's what it is
Yeah.
because we are energetic beings. And just like you said at the very start, like a prayer as you sit in a pew or an intention you have that someone would get well or recover from something, or that you wish someone well on a new adventure, a life adventure out in the world, or a new baby coming into the world. That is energy and it is carried within our thoughts and our words. And to me, like you, I never take for granted the gift of having that intention for ourselves or other people. But I think most importantly is the awareness of the power of that intention for ourselves and other people, Sunshine.
Oh, yeah. I I was probably 3 or 4 months into my recovery, and I wrote the prayer that I say almost every single day still,
Wow.
right? I say the same prayer. And this prayer includes gratitude
Mm,
for being led and protected by my guides, gratitude to help me make the right decisions. It is surrender is in the prayer, is built in, right? Allow me to surrender so I can enjoy life. Like, I don't need to have to control this anymore. Just tell me what to do,
mm,
right? And lead me where I need to go, because life will be so much more beautiful and easy for me if I stop
mm.
trying to control it.
Yeah.
But the latter part of that prayer is all for others,
Mm,
right? I ask for protection around those that I love. I ask to be of service, to allow others to be of service to me, right? Because
mhm,
I get to make an impact in the world when I allow myself to be helped,
mhm.
right? It's a gift to be able to allow someone to help. Like, you give a gift
Yes.
to someone when you allow them to help you.
Mm,
And the other one that I do is, the intention I set is to pray for those that are still suffering from addiction.
mm,
Addiction is an energetic that has rippled itself through because of all of the hate, all of the violence, all of the trauma, right? People become addicted to numbing, to it
mm,
keeps them out of that. It keeps them in that darkness, right? It keeps them from recognizing that light,
mm,
right? And I pray that they find the courage they need to make a change,
mm,
right? Because that's what it takes. That's what we were just talking, like, it takes the courage to face the fear for the first time.
mm.
Yeah.
And I think it's finding that courage within us, and
Mm,
I always think back, and just as you said, you go back to a child and you're curious and you want to climb the tree, and the adults are shouting at you, stop, you'll fall. And I'm laughing, thinking, well, they'll definitely fall if you keep shouting at them and telling them
yeah.
they're going to do that, instead of going, climb, but, be cautious, mind yourself. Look out there
Yeah.
and tell us what's out in the world. How do you see the world? And that if we were asked more about the way we saw it, not being told how we should see it. And even nowadays, it's again, people get very opinionated if you don't see it their way, or you don't agree with their politics, or if you don't go along with what their religion says. And for me, it's going, you can have your opinion, but don't force it upon me. What I wish for the world is that there would be more understanding between people
Oh
everywhere,
man.
and acceptance of meeting people where they are, however they are, and that there is some part of us in each person we meet today.
Uh, I don't know where it came from, but I've found throughout most of my life, judgment doesn't exist for other people. I had to go through a lot of, like, healing to stop judging myself, but, like, judgment of other people, just has not been an innate thing that I've had, right? I do believe that if we were more acceptance and more curious and more inquisitive, the world would be a much different place, right? If we lacked, I've said this a handful of other times. What would the world be like if none of us could see,
Yeah.
right? Because the reality is, so much of the judgment comes through sight,
Mhm.
right? We see someone that's different from us, right? We see they look different, they're acting different, right? And if we didn't see, how different would the world be? Would we never judge, right?
Mm.
I mean, you'd say, "Oh, that's too cold for me," or "You're too rough," or, "Oh, you smell, right? You stink,
Yeah.
maybe." But it's a much different experience than the judgment that comes through our eyes, the judgment that even comes in the mirror, right? Like, what a crazy thing to think, right? That if we didn't have mirrors, even, how would we see ourselves differently?
Mm.
Um, yeah, so it would be a much different place if we weren't. And you know, this curiosity thing, it made me think, and what popped into my head as you were talking about it is, in the recovery circles that I lead, we do journaling every single time to allow people this opportunity. It might only be 10 minutes that we journal for, but it allows them the opportunity to look inwards, to reflect, to see things within themselves that they may not have paused and taken a look, to be curious about,
Mm,
before that, right? Like I I did a fire walk a number of years ago, and we were told to leave something in the fire and walk into something else, right? And I left. It was my time to leave my own self-judgment and to
mm,
replace that self-judgment with curiosity in the world around me. Like, why did I? And I cannot tell you, there's a handful of things throughout my recovery that have impacted my life. Um, and the curiosity has probably been one of the biggest, to being curious about things and the way people are and why people do the things that they do and why I do the things that I do, and to not judge, right?
mm.
Because it's that in that judgment that we start to go down the path of fear, shame, guilt, self-loathing, right?
Mm.
Yeah, so I love that you bring up that curiosity. And
Yeah. And I think it helps in obviously the type of work that you do or that I do as well, that curiosity, because we like people, we're interested in people, we want the best for people. Even starting this podcast, it was curious about other people's lives and how they came through their trauma, what helped them, what they're doing now, how they're helping others. That was a curiosity in me. So I get to speak with people all over the world that I necessarily might not ever meet, Sunshine. So for me, curiosity is opening doorways everywhere in my life, as I'm sure it is in yours. And I want to come back to your amazing work because there is so much. So obviously you have your circles, but you have so much more. You have a
mm,
mobile app that this is at the heart of your movement, the Sober Witch Life mobile app, the first of its kind, offering free transformative resources, including the Sober Witches Toolkit, weekly recovery circles, and an online community. Um, and you founded the Recovery Coven. So that's your membership, workshops, powerful rituals, sacred space for witches to stay grounded, empowered, and aligned. You're the author of Sober Witch Life, a magical guide to recovery. And this is your own deeply personal and transformative book written over the first 5 years of sobriety, which is amazing. And this blends journal prompts, rituals, and magical practices to help in recovery, reclaim their power, and heal in alignment. And you also have podcasts. So that's what I mean. You
mm.
have so much to support other people, and your podcast, The Sober Witch Life and the Deepest Spirituality podcast as well. How do you see yourself now, Sunshine? And I know we talked about looking in mirrors or other people seeing us through their eyes, but how do you see yourself now, apart from all of the work that you do, but as a person in general, as a being living on this planet, how do you see yourself?
Mm. I think so often people describe how they see themselves and what they're doing,
Mm,
right? So I love that you just asked me this question, right? I see myself as a curious, loving, kind, compassionate being, both to myself and to others.
mm,
Yeah, I'm still healing. I'm still on this journey. There's still work,
mm,
right? But I get to enjoy life and the beauty in it.
mm,
Uh, and I get to be present in it, and I get to feel all of the, you know, highs and the lows. I won't even say good and the bad, the highs and the lows, right? And I get to bear witness to each and every one of them, and their purpose and what they mean in my life. Yeah, I see myself as a beautiful, fallible, imperfect human.
I love that. And I think most importantly, after a conversation, is that you not only stood up for yourself, for the person that was in deep pain and wounded. You stood up for her, but you stood by her as well.
Mm. And I still do. We have a lot of conversations, and I I'm still right now going through like a really intense round of learning how to forgive with pain, from a pain and hurt that was inflicted on me as a young child, and yeah, I'm standing there with my inner child, my younger self, standing there with the older self that I'm here to become, and I'm standing with the version of me that's right here, and feeling all the somatic pieces
Mm.
of what I'm going through. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful, Sunshine, because as I often say to my guests, when people see us and where we are now and the work we do and all of that and having these conversations, they think, yeah, yeah, but they have it figured out now. So I'm so glad you said that because I'm always saying it, we don't have everything figured out. We're so far along in our own journey of healing and discovery, but there's so much more, that we may not discuss on every in every conversation with every person, but that conversation within ourselves is ongoing, isn't it?
It's always, I think one of the things that really made me curious when I first stepped into recovery around I stepped into AA and the 12 step program is sometimes people would introduce themselves as a recovered alcoholic.
Mm.
And I was just like, how like recovered, right? How do we, I mean, life is a constant growth and
Mm.
exploration and understanding of who we are and what we're doing. And, I mean, I might not have I may come to the point at some time in my life where I've uncovered a lot of the trauma and the pain and the suffering and what I've gone through. But I will ask spirit to make sure that I always continue to grow. And it, if I finish the work in this lifetime, let me extend back to the lifetimes previously,
Mm.
right? Let me extend out to the generations next to me. Let me make sure that it's not just my life that's no longer in pain and suffering, but the lives of all of those that, have come before me and are going to come after.
Mm. And that is so powerful. And I think that's what it means to be in service of others. It's not just the physical beings that are present in your life or will be in your life. It is going back through the generations. It's through the people that have been affected through the hurts and wounds of the past. And it's one of the things I suppose I discovered. I remember doing work for myself and doing a lot of work, and I could see my ancestors lined up,
Mm.
thousands of them. And I kind of went, what are you all doing here? And they said, we're now following your light. And I thought, oh, wow, they had paved this path, which I eventually got to walk upon. Some of it was through their pain, some of it was through their joy and their learning. But they were now following my light, witnessing how I was changing the path to move forward for the next generation. That was really powerful.
Oh my, when we start to get to the place in our journey where we can understand that, right? When we can see it, right? Or feel it, or just innately know it. I mean, there is nothing more empowering, more reconciling uh, than being able to bear witness to how the work that we are doing within our own selves in our own lives gets to ripple not just through the lives that sit around us in this physical plane, but through the lives and the souls and the generations, both like I said, before and after, right? I mean, there is just when we get to that point, my gosh, I think that's also where our mission becomes a lot clearer.
Yeah. Sunshine, you have brought the magic out in this conversation today, and even the sun has started to come out after it was raining when we started this conversation. I think you're a wonderful being, and
Thank
that,
you.
that the light that you are shining in the darkness for others now is so needed, and that never ever feel that even for this goes for everybody listening, never feel that one kind thought or intention or deed that you do for another is going missed anywhere. It's not, because it's felt deeply, and I think we need more of it, just as you said, in the world. So if people would like to get in contact with you, Sunshine, let's give all your details. You sunshinereadings.com, so that's if people want to get a reading off you, and Illuminate unschool.com. That's if they want to contact you around any of the workshops, any of the trainings that you give. Soberwitch.life. I mean, there's loads of things. I will put all of these in the show notes as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, and you're on Facebook, Sunshine Witchki. Um, and Sober Witches Bazaar as well on Facebook. But I'll put the links up as well for everybody. And your book is Sober Witch Life, a magical guide to recovery. I think that's a lovely way as well for somebody that maybe isn't finding peace or reconciliation with the natural, or not natural, but I suppose the programmed way, or the whatever is just out there, that there might be something else for them to step into and maybe see if it can support them. Because as you said, when you are in recovery, you have to find the best means of feeling supported and safe within that recovery. And then it will help you, as you said, making that choice every day
Yeah.
to stay in recovery, which you've done. And I'm so glad that you have. I think you've brought the sunshine into your own life as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Sharon. I really appreciate that. And I feel blessed and privileged and very grateful that I get to do this work. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are probably grateful that you are doing it and you're helping support them. Sunshine, thank you so much for this lovely conversation today.
Thank you, Sharon.
So thank you everybody for listening. You've been listening to the Sharon Fitzmaurice podcast. And until next time, take care of you.